we're telling them predictively, this is where you need to put your money. We're integrating where you spend your money at any given point in time, not wasting a penny of your money because it's all modeled. And we're telling them what kind of message, who you need to speak to, how much you need to spend. There's a big difference between, we know we need to be on Amazon, so we're going to throw $5,000 at it because some agency told me to. Well, what if it's the wrong time with the wrong message and you could spend $2,000? Some of these channels, it's really about what do you need to spend to get the impact you're looking for.
Welcome to Modern Automotive Marketing, the podcast where data meets strategy and dealerships turn insight into action. We're talking full funnel strategies, predictive insights, and real-world tactics that help dealers win in today's market. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Modern Automotive Marketing, where I get to talk anything and everything I want to talk about to what makes modern automotive marketing modern. And I got a couple cool guests with me today. Actually, I'm super excited to get into this because we're going to talk about a very important and I think maybe overlooked topic, right? We're going to get into integrated and just fragmented marketing and just, what is that and how we can overcome it. I have two very special guests with me, and I'm talking, these guys are pros, guys. So be ready to get your notebooks out and take some notes here. I have both Justin and David with me from Prophecy Digital. What's going on, guys? How you doing?
We're great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited to get into these topics, and also a very timely one too, right? I mean, just to kind of, as this time of year that we're getting into, and sales and service business, just doing what they're doing, it's always a good time to get into this. I think everybody out there is watching, listening right now is looking at how they can do more with the budget they have, and what are some of the best strategies for that. It is strategy with Jason has kind of been my thing. So I love talking about strategies, and I'm excited to get into it with you guys. But here's what I love to do and how I'd like to kick these podcasts off is I love kicking them off with a little origin story. Because I'm fundamentally fascinated. It's just how someone wakes up one day and goes, hey, the automotive industry, that's where I'm going to go build a business. So let's Justin, I know your story. I know everyone who's watching is very familiar with yours. But David, I'm going to start with you. How in the world did you choose the automotive space, and what was kind of that idea, that big idea of like, hey, I'm going to go start Prophecy Digital for you?
Okay, so automotive is kind of funny. So I was determined to be the one guy that grew up in Detroit and wasn't in automotive. I'm like, everyone's in automotive, and my family wasn't in it. I didn't grow up in it. Wasn't even really a car guy. But I got through first 10 years of my career never touching automotive. I was getting my MBA, and one of my buddies that I took a bunch of classes with, and we really hit it off. He was in like the treasury area of Audi Volkswagen. Okay. And we had like just finished our program, and he called me one day. He said, I've got the perfect job for you. He goes, Audi has this open spot that you're perfect for. And I'm like, well, I mean, you always take a recommendation from a good friend. I interviewed on a Friday, had an offer by Monday, and it was the quickest I'd ever been hired anywhere. And the only reason I took it was, if I'm going to do automotive, I'm going to do something different. And Audi in Detroit is different. I didn't want to work for any of the big three. I wanted to do something different. And it was like the best decision I ever made, because it was a really critical point for Audi. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but it was really when Audi was kind of coming up, and it was, are we going to sell over 100,000 units? And I had a direct line to some pretty key executives. The cool thing about Audi was it's flat. So you got a lot of exposure, and I felt like I was getting another MBA. Like, I learned automotive on an accelerated pace, and I got to move around a lot. And I will tell you, all these years later, which was 25 years later, a lot of us are still friends, and mentors I had there are still people I talk to. And we joke, and we call it Camelot. Like, it was the best time ever. And I learned so much, and that started me on my path. And I was starting down the CFO path, and after about a year and a half, I got pulled over, and it was, you've got too much personality. You got to work in sales and marketing, and that led my path all around. Worked for the captive, worked with dealers for a long time. That's where I started getting into digital, and that started my career down a totally different path. And best thing I ever did. Absolutely loved it. And I still have Audi in my blood all these years later.
Well, I mean, that would have been a really fun time. I mean,
Yeah, it was.
it would be. I mean, I'm thinking like, I mean, this is when Audi was producing like full body sedans with manual transmissions and big motors. And like, it was actually kind of funny because Audi was doing what the big three kind of went away from doing. So it was like, like it would have been a really, really great time. And in fact, I mean, I remember kind of that time frame. Like, what was it? What was my favorite? My favorite? Oh, the Audi S6. There we go. Let me get a full body sedan, and I'm gonna shove a V10 into it,
Yeah.
right? And hey, we can market that. We can sell that. That would have been cool. That would have been a super cool time to
It
be
was. It
space.
was it was great, and it was so much fun. Like, everyone kind of was really pushing together, and you can't always say that. And I say even to this day, I was like, those were some of the best years of my career, and I was still in my 20s. So I was like, I didn't realize, I maybe didn't fully appreciate how great it was. So that's what started the passion for me. To answer your next question, like fast
Mhm.
forward all these years,
Yes.
how did I get to prophecy? So when I left Audi, and I had worked on the VW side a little bit too. I went off and did 2 startups
Okay.
and failed at both of them. And I will tell you, biggest cliche in the world, smartest thing ever. I could not do this company had I not failed. Like, you have to learn from your mistakes. And, I think if you succeed the first time, you kind of like can't be told you would ever do anything wrong, right? Like you're like, you feel like you're bulletproof. You have to fail. Failing was so important. So I did 2 failed startups, learned a ton, learned so much about technology and digital, and neither of them were automotive. So that break from automotive allowed me to bring some new ideas back to automotive. Um, Feeling like maybe I needed a little stability, I went and worked for Urban Science for a while, learned a lot about data,
Mhm.
learned a lot. That company's had some really unique things that I sort of put in my toolbox. And then I just started doing some consulting with GM and saw an opportunity, particularly with Cadillac, to do some pretty cool things on the digital side. Met my co-founder Alex, and that started Prophecy. We were part of a larger company as like almost like a skunk works, like a startup within an established company. And then we bought ourselves back a couple years into it, and that was Prophecy. The thing that was really cool about starting the companies, we had a different view. We'd both worked in digital forever. We both worked with dealers forever. Um, for me, from the OEM side and from the provider vendor side. So I felt like I really understood how dealers look at business. Owner to owner, it's great to be able to look them in the eye and know like what's important to them and how they think. We really wanted to do this differently.
Yep.
We wanted to provide, dealers get oversold and underdelivered every day.
All the time. I mean, we see this all the time.
We wanted a different way to do this. So everything for us is about being forward looking and predictive. Everything's on data, modeled, AI. And AI, automotive is notorious for buzzwords and for the thing of the day. A couple of years ago was digital retailing, then CDP, now it's AI. But bolting AI into something that's already built is not really doing it the right way. 5 years ago when we started, first line of code, AI, turning on our AI machine. Everything we do is AI, machine learning, statistical, modeled. And even though between Alex and I, we've got, 60 years experience in the industry, we don't rely on trust us, we're credible. It's the data does the talking, the modeling, and bringing stuff from outside of automotive into automotive to look at media, how you buy it, how you predict what's going to happen, what you do when. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about as we get into this conversation.
No, and in fact, that's a perfect segue, right? Because
Yeah.
today's conversation for everybody out there watching and listening is your marketing truly integrated or is it fragmented?
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to tell you guys right now, and you know this as well. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work and consult with dealerships across the country. Way over 90% of the marketing is fragmented. I mean, most dealerships run, I would consider disconnected campaigns across
Yeah.
multiple agencies and platforms, and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
wasting budget, they're losing shoppers in the process, and so, an integrated omni-channel strategy, look, that's going to ensure every ad, every video, and message are all working together, right? And so that it tastes good and is presented well, ultimately to the consumer and just bettering that buyer journey. I mean, Justin, we've talked about this on other episodes, right? And guys, you're going to hear this a lot in modern automotive marketing podcasts. Is over 90% of the customer journey happens before they even show up to your dealership. And as marketers, we really need to practically tattoo that on our chest so that we're reminded every single day of just what we need to do. So I'd love to get into this. Let's do this. I want to kick this off for, kind of the both of you guys is, what is the let's talk about the big problem and how you guys, see the big problem. And Justin, I'll go ahead and start with you, and then David, I'll follow up with
I think the problem when it comes to, fragmentation versus integration is a lot of agencies do a great job pitching,
you.
right? And they will tell you that they can do many things incredibly well. And that's not always the case. And that's not taking a shot at anybody, but dealers need to understand the big difference between having a multi-channel effect and having an omni-channel impact, right? When you are truly integrated, you have multiple campaigns for every profit center of your dealership running from top of funnel to the bottom of the funnel
Yes.
across the channels where we know shoppers are spending time, right? You and I have talked about this, Jason, the CTV because you're watching Amazon down to the scrolling on Amazon and then, watching a YouTube video. I think the big gap, right? The big problem is when dealers are working with multiple agencies
Mhm.
to cover all of these channels and not having it integrated, you've got major opportunity for risk because the things aren't working together. And like, I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead, but like that's how everything that we do is tied together, is data based. There's no playbook. What we do for one dealer is going to be different than what we
Of
do
course.
for another, and making sure that it's all tied together and really truly integrated solves a lot of this challenge that dealers are facing.
Well, and look, I mean, when it's not all talking to each other, right? When it's not unified, right? When the,
Yep.
when the creative's not unified, the data's not unified, the targeting across, the channels, what it does is we're just creating efficiencies. And for everybody out there watching and listening, when we say the word efficiencies, what we're saying is you're spending too much. You're not
Yep.
spending it correctly,
Yep.
because it's really in the marketing world. When anytime the word inefficiency comes up, it's you're spending money on stuff you really shouldn't be spending money on, right? It's just there's just a major disconnect. David, how does this impact dealers' kind of ability to reach the right shopper consistently when it's kind of fragmented, it's kind of like all over the place, and it's not streamlined and integrated? In your opinion, how does that affect us reaching the right shopper at the right time?
Yeah, I'm really glad you raised it. I'm glad you brought up inefficiency because you know I love to focus on, and Justin hit on it, risk, right? Like
Yes.
I'm a business owner, right? So anything I spend money on, I can't spend it elsewhere. So I want to, buy low, sell high. I want to make sure that I'm limiting risk. And that's what I want to do for my clients. In fact, that's why we spell the company the way we did. Like you notice, it's not the traditional spelling of prophecy. I want to focus on profit. I want to make sure we're driving incremental sales profitably. Anyone can sell something and give it away, but can you sell it properly? When we started 5 years ago, when we were doing omni-channel and we're saying we're going to be on all these different channels, no one else was even doing that. Now we're starting to see in the last year and a half or so, maybe two, oh yeah, when we're pitching new clients, oh yeah, we're on some of these channels. But you could literally just light your money on fire if you're doing it in an unintegrated fashion or non-integrated fashion, because you have to think about where do you need to be when, and we're thinking about that predictively. We're looking at, all right, here's where the market is, here's where it's going. This is where you need to be spending your money at any given time. And we're looking at this every week, right? So you talk about the budget side. We're telling them predictively, this is where you need to put your money. We may tell them to hold it where it's at. We may tell them major changes because things are shifting. So we're integrating where you spend your money at any given point in time, not wasting a penny of your money because it's all modeled. And we're telling them what kind of message, who you need to speak to, how much you need to spend, because just because you're on a channel, there's a big difference between, well, we know we need to be on Amazon, so we're going to throw $5,000 at it because some agency told me to. Well, what if it's the wrong time with the wrong message, and you could spend $2,000? Some of these channels, it's really about what do you need to spend to get the impact you're looking for. So like Pinterest is a great one. Pinterest should be a huge part of your strategy, but it doesn't have to be a huge part of your expense. Like we haven't really dialed down to how much you need to spend to get the return you're looking for. That's important. And when do you pull that lever? So even though we're on 12 plus channels, We never use all of them. We don't treat each dealer the same. And it depends on what we're predicting to happen, on what lever we pull when, and then what our model tells us on how much we spend on any given week. That's efficiency. We have about a 60-40 split. So we're doing about 40% of the money goes into the upper funnel, but over 60% of the conversions happen there. And it's about $13.50 a conversion. That's less than half of what it's more low funnel version.
100%. It's more cost effective. Look, I love the fact, guys, this is why we call this modern automotive marketing podcast, right? Like, I mean, we've talked a little bit about integrated versus fragmented, but we're going to go straight into predictive. Let's just because right now, if we could just get dealers integrated, that's going to be a huge win because, Justin, we've talked about this before, and David, I know this, right? Like, well over 80+% of dealerships' marketing strategies are channel based. And you kind of touched a little bit on it when you were just saying, it's just like, I'm going to spend my 5,000 here, my 5,000 there. It's like, they're like proverbial check boxes. Like, I'm going to check off the Meta box. I'm going to check off the TikTok box. I'm going to check off the Google box. And I'm going to check off, you know what I mean? I mean, just getting these channels integrated to each other so that there's a consistent message. And then, dude, go pull a predictive level. I love the lever, by the way. I love that visual. Just so you guys know, that's what a predictive is. A model. It's a lever. We pull it. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot more to it, but I love the simplicity of that idea, right? Like, I'm gonna go pull this, and that just now it supercharges the whole thing, right? And now you're spending money when and who you need to spend it against, not just checking off these proverbial boxes. I mean, Justin, I know we talked about this and I want to get into it with you because in your experience, like, where do most dealers go wrong when they work with multiple vendors or agencies?
Well, sure. I mean, again, I said it earlier, there's a lot of, great sales pitches out there and presentations, but where does the rubber actually meet the road? I'm going to go back one sec on the conversation we just happened, and then I'll finish the question you asked me, Jason. But it's like, David and I were presenting to a pretty sizable dealer yesterday, and they were able to check all the boxes that they were on all of the channels.
Sure.
Right. Great. That's more than many. We see so many that it's like, Google and Facebook.
That's true.
And stop. Right. So these guys did a really good job. And we were happy to hear that they were effectively leveraging multiple channels, omni channels, plural. Right. But when we were able to say, okay, cool. So how does it all connect? There was a little bit of a pause because there wasn't a real good answer. And okay, if it doesn't all connect, how are you able to forecast and predict what's coming next so you understand, hey, we need to move money from Amazon over to Facebook, or we need to decrease Pinterest or increase Pinterest? And that's where it really got fascinating. So I think, Jason, and I know you asked me, like, where some of the gaps are and where it can go wrong. But I think that's what really gets fascinating when dealers start to look at, it's not just about getting an agency or agencies that can collect all of the channels, right? And this is kind of the first place where it can go wrong. It's about what are they doing with it, right? Yes. Part of the strategy that we bring is data based. Dave shared earlier that, like, our first line of code is turning on the AI machine, right? Getting that engine going. Everything that we do is based on data. And so when we work with a dealer in one geo versus another, the strategy isn't going to be the same. So I would say that's another opportunity where dealers sometimes fall into kind of playbook syndrome or playbook scenario. Hey, it worked for a dealer in New York, so it's got to work for a dealer in Texas.
Of course.
It might, but if that agency isn't capable of taking a personalized data focused strategy, that's an opportunity where it's problematic. So I think the first point, there aren't many agencies out there that can effectively do true omni-channel and integrated fashion with the number of channels that we're on and currently growing, right? Then it's, if they do have the channels, how do they work with it in a cohesive fashion to get all of the messaging where it needs to go?
Well, and doing it predictively. I mean, you hit on it, Jason. Predictively is so important. I mean, common sense, right? Like, it's great to know that it rained 2 weeks ago, but if you know it's going to rain in 2 weeks or 2 months and you can plan your life. I mean, this dealer that Justin's mentioning from yesterday, when we started showing them how we predict sales cycles and how we forecast out and what we do 90 days plus out to, 98% accuracy. This guy was blown away. He's like, I have never seen this before.
Yep.
And then he's like, if you could do this, and he started giving us ideas of some things we've been working on. I mean, that's when you're really getting to where it's not only fun, but it's really exciting because we're both engaged and we're starting idea sharing. It's like that's when it gets to the next level. It was awesome.
No, you're absolutely right, and I've been in those strategy sessions before, and they are a lot of fun, right? I mean, I think dealers don't want fragmented. They don't want to have to just check out the proverbial boxes and make sure that they're just covering their channels. And they surely don't want to have to work with multiple agencies or multiple vendors to ultimately get this accomplished, because there's no way that they're sharing data back and forth. Right. So I mean, just that in itself is just completely inefficient, right? And there's no way to create any type of predictive modeling when you're working with like 4 or 5 different companies to ultimately get something done. Sorry, David, you were going to add to that?
Basically, the important thing for us is really that forward looking, and then really being able to bring some different things. We were looking for a different way to do media, and we looked at day trading. We started thinking about how important it is to be able to take data in a real-time basis and translate that in a way to account for what's going on in the world and have a material impact on a day-to-day basis. And we started looking at different calculations, and that's where we got inspiration to look at media differently. And we're looking at it and predicting out on a daily basis. And we've found ways to look at website traffic through some different calculations that allow us to say, hey, if it's doing this, we do this. If it's doing that, we do that. And we've taken something very complex and made it simple. And our clients love it. They understand it, and it works. I mean, we built our whole company on it. And like, to give you an example, we had a client tell us earlier in the year, they said it's the 20th of the month. Our traffic's down 20%. We got a week and a half left. We're really worried. We said, well, you haven't hit the upper limit. We ride that upper limit up. As soon as it hits it, we know you're going to start selling. And it was a Monday at 2:30. And we said, trust us, in the next 24 hours, you will be selling cars. They texted us at 10 p.m. that night. We sold 9 cars today. We said, see? I mean, and that we built our whole company on that, and it works like clockwork. And it's totally unique to us. We just put a lot of time into figuring out how to do this differently.
See, this is what I love, having these I get to talk to some data nerds, and then I get to talk to like some real data nerds, right? And I actually don't use that in a negative way. I think it's a badge of honor these days. In fact, I think anybody out there watching, listening right now, from a dealer perspective, you should be a data nerd. Like, you should be like, it's one thing to target an in-market customer. All right. It is another thing to approach it from a full journey. I mean, guys, just unpack a little bit what David just said here, right? And we said earlier in the show, right? 90% of the journey happens before the customer even gets into the dealership. And, look, most dealers out there, guys, I get it. I've seen the analytics. So like, you're targeting, 3% of the in-market audience and ignoring the other 97% that are maybe a little higher up in the funnel. Yeah. The most inefficient thing you can do is just that in itself, right?
Well, yeah. And so you have some people that'll say, well, upper funnel is the OEM's job. And we're like, no, like, what do you do? A lot of these like OEM programs, and I'm not necessarily, trying to throw shade at them, but they're very focused on low funnel, right? And we've had conversations with folks that are like, we've tried, we can't get the dealers to do it, but they really focus low funnel. Well, that might help you a third of the time. There's a lot of times where there's no inherent demand for the brand. Well, what are you going to do? Fight over a limited number of folks and pay $10 a click when you could spend $5 per thousand, generate a captive audience, and then move them through the funnel. It's so much smarter. It's like beyond obvious, but a lot of people don't do it.
Well, it's just a total lack of strategy. Let's just call it what it is, right? It's marketing for the sake of doing marketing. And you know what, as an industry, I mean, Justin, I know we've talked about this before, right? Like, we've seen this play out, right? It's doing it for the sake of doing it. All right. And that is just wildly inefficient. Here's, Justin, I actually got one for you. Because I love how this kind of plays out, right? If you guys are listening, watching, like, you have this journey, right? Then you have the integration of all these different channels, right? And then you got to tack on a predictive, model that goes along with that. So not only are you focusing full journey, you're fully integrated in all those channels, but now you're actually moving budgets accordingly where they need to be and who they need to be targeting to get you the most bang for a buck. I mean, that in itself, that is a major, big, monster, hefty, bite-sized strategy. Justin, here's my question for you. What are the downstream effects of that level of integration? How does it actually translate into an ROI for dealers?
Wow, that was a lot.
Sorry, I get going.
Packaged it. When you said it like that, you were like, you do this and you do this and you do this. Like, man, if you step back and think about it.
Justin, don't forget about creative. We do all the creative too.
Right. We did a series about that too.
There's a lot that goes into that, Jason. I think, so I stepped back for a second. I'm like, yeah, I guess it is a lot in terms of like downstream impact and ROI. So I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, and Dave supported, right? The first thing for me is removing risk, right? If we have somebody's advertising budget, and again, I'm going to repeat what David said, if you're spending money somewhere, you can't spend it somewhere else. So we need to make it as efficient as possible. Part of what we do, and Dave referenced this, was how we work through the budget. Our team is going to meet with dealers weekly, reviewing the data and reviewing what we're looking at to ensure that there's no waste. Right? There's no point in having waste in advertising spend. Go back to efficiency. It doesn't make sense. We're looking weekly versus monthly, right? So again, you asked about ROI. Oftentimes, campaigns are kind of set it and forget it, or set it this month. We'll see what happens, and we'll come back next month and we'll tell you how you did. And that's certainly not forward looking. So having those conversations weekly, and it's about making recommendations based on the data that we see, forward-looking predictions, right? We want to make a recommendation to shift budget, or maybe we're going to make a recommendation to do nothing, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, when it comes to ROI, the biggest thing is, eliminating risk. And a lot of the conversations we have, Jason, are focused around sales, right? ROI, as we know, also happens in the fixed ops department. So there's
bring that up. We don't talk enough about it. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we don't. But it's a huge opportunity to make sure that ROI is measured not just in new sales or used sales, but also in fixed ops. And we've seen instances where a dealer who adopts a true integrated omni-channel strategy will have massive amplification on their marketing results. So that's pure ROI. When it comes to looking at fixed, there's a shorter path to that sale, right? Completing the RO on service than there is on a new or used vehicle purchase. But at the end of the day, like if I were to tie one thing together, Jason, as it comes to ROI, like eliminate the risk, because if you're rolling the dice and you don't know what's going to happen, your ROI is up in the air. Do something that eliminates the risk, and that your ROI is going to be that much more stable.
Well, you know that the dollars being used, every dollar is being used strategically. Again, going back to what we were talking about, not just some proverbial checkbox, but strategically. David, here's what I got for you. I'm sure you probably have, some dealership examples, maybe a couple of notches in your belt that you may be very proud of. So what's maybe a quick example of one of those dealers?
Well, so there's a couple of things. I mean, I'll give you something that's a little bit more scaled, right? Because I think scale always matters, right? So we've got an OEM that we've been working with for 5 years. It started out on a pilot. We beat everything we told them we were going to do, and then it's grown from there. So I think it's meaningful. We measure everything on sales, year over year sales. We want to see improvement, and it's sales to human beings, right? So we don't include fleet or anything like that. So this particular OEM, I'm not going to go back 5 years. I'll go because the numbers are the same. Over the last 3 years, we had close to 80% of our clients that were up in 2022. They were up 45% year over year. Headed into 23, we're like, man, we set a pretty high bar. We hope we can meet it. We had 84% of our clients up, and they were up 12%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you remember 2023,
Yeah, that's a struggle.
you got a double-digit return when no inventory, no incentives, super high interest rates. That was the COVID payback year. We were actually pretty pleased with that. Last year, we had, again, almost 80% of our dealers up, and they were up about 15%. This year to date through June, obviously July is not closed, we have 93% of our dealers up, and they're up 17.5%. So we have consistent performance all the way through. We're typically in the low 80s and anywhere from, high teens to low 20s. That's our typical run rate. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, that we consistently perform. What I would also say is there's one other one I like to mention. We will tackle anything. We actually the juice for us is the challenge, right? Yeah. We have a client that's a pretty big Ford store in the South. We got introduced to them to say, hey, what could you guys do for commercial, right? So we started doing omni-channel for commercial. And this is where creative comes in. We have our own creative studio. This is the one place where we felt AI isn't there yet. I think we all know if you see an AI-based ad, it just isn't there. It'll be there. It'll probably be there soon, but it's not there yet. So we use creative really strongly here because these guys had some great why buys. They had some great reasons why you would want to take your cars there or your trucks there, because quite honestly, if they're not on the road, you're not getting your revenue. So you need them diagnosed quickly. You need them out on the road. We had some great messages for them. They are hitting numbers out of the back end that they have never hit before. And they do a huge business, but they were just chinning the bar a couple of times. That's now their run rate. And they're very close to some numbers that they've never even sniffed at. We've been with them about a year and a half. And the fact that we were able to just take something that was a totally new concept and really succeed with them and hit some numbers that are eye-popping, we're super proud of that. We would love to grow that business. There's not a lot of people that are that aggressive with commercial, but I'm telling you, this has been a massive success story. So we're really proud of that too.
Well, see, this is what I also love about just the way you guys decide to tackle this. And there, from a strategic perspective, from a technology perspective, it's fundamentally, it is at the definition of what modern, automotive marketing should be, right?
Yeah.
But it's the fact that you've taken this across the entire dealership, right? I mean, like to your point, it's in your name, profit. Like you guys put it right smack dab, right in the name of the company, and that is your guys' focus. And the cool thing is, you guys fundamentally understand that profit not always comes from the front of the house. It's too often I think the rest of the departments get overlooked, and the fact that you guys are like, look, no, fully, if you're going to run fully integrated, you're going to be fully omni-channel, and you're going to be really with objective increasing profit, you got to focus on the entire dealership, right? So I would challenge, right, any GM out there right now that's thinking, hey, we've already advertised on all the major platforms. Well, congratulations. Did you do it integrated? All right. And I can sure in the heck tell you didn't have any predictive modeling against it. All right. And from a creative perspective, were you actually able to support what that predictive model was pushing back at you in a scalable creative solution? I can probably guarantee you did, because I know, and I consider myself a great marketer. There ain't no way in hell I could do that on my own. And that's why I encourage you guys, you need to find a partner. Look, guys, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our time, but I still think there is much of this conversation that needs to continue. I think we touched on some great stuff, but I still think for everybody out there watching and listening now who would maybe love to connect with you and continue, some portion of this conversation real quick. Justin, how can they get a hold of you? David, how can they get a hold of you? And any final thoughts you guys want to throw out there?
Yeah, sure. And I know you're always good about dropping this in the show notes. My email is justin.friend@prophecydigital.com. You can find our website at prophecy, and it's PROFICY digital.com. Best way to get a hold of me. In terms of final thoughts, man, Jason, I think you kind of summed it up. If you're a general manager, marketing director, or somebody who's responsible for marketing at a dealership, and you think you are doing true integrated omni-channel advertising with creative, with forward-looking predictive, I would love to connect with you just to see and understand, because I think most people, when they really truly start to peel back, the curtain, so to speak, I think they're going to find, fragmentation, disconnection, multi-channel versus omni-channel, and again, I don't know that anybody else, and this isn't to be, you know, a major brag on us. I don't know anybody else that has the ability to do the forward looking predictive forecasting that we can. When you combine all those things together, it's a pretty powerful message.
100% agree. David, for yourself, best way to connect, any final thoughts?
Yeah, and everything Justin said in terms of to connect. My email is just David at Prophecy, PROFICY digital.com. And then, like Justin said, through the website. Yeah, I mean, I support everything Justin said. The one thing I would say, what clients tend to like about working with us is a one-stop shop. We've got, you know, from like a marketing director, it allows them to go do other things that they've always wanted to do that they couldn't because they spent most of their time wrangling vendors. I think it's a huge plus that way. And quite honestly, we make them look good. You know, when they get to work with us, they can direct us on some things they need. We make it real easy for them to just have to make decisions and not have to get in the weeds if they don't want to. They certainly can if they want. You know, your data nerd point, Jason. You know, you can be one if you want to be. You don't have to be. It's whatever works for you. So I think that's a big advantage we have. And I think, you know, look, we knew, and I named the company, so I knew what I was doing when I did it. We're putting a target on our back by focusing on profitability, by focusing on being predictive. You know, we're 5 years in and we live into that every day. And I'm pretty confident saying we deliver on it. So we would love to talk to anyone that wants to hear more and, you know, and deliver the same kind of results we've been delivering for 5 years. And just thank you for having us. Love the opportunity to talk about it. Love your engagement and belief in what we're doing. I know you believe in the same thing. So I think this is where things are going, and we're super excited in continuing to grow and deliver what we're able to deliver and continue to advance. That's a big part of what we're looking at doing.
And I just love the boldness. I have to say, I love the boldness. You know, when I think of really, when I started thinking about putting the series together, modern automotive marketing, and like the word boldness did have to come out in that, right? Because you know, if you're just going, I think you kind of said it earlier, right? If you're just going to be following others, you're really not leading the pack, you know. And you got to be pushing the envelope. You got to be pushing the envelope.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be pushing the level around targeting and creative, and pushing the attribution of profit. This is music to my ears. I mean, you guys said I was a dealer. I sat in that seat, and you know that is not something. Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox. But everybody out there watching and listening, you guys know I've said this many times in many other podcasts for decades. All right, as an industry, we have been told to accept engagement as being the only and golden attribution out there, when we know that there are people out there that are pushing the level and looking at how we're going to make things profitable, how are we going to help you make more money, right? And Justin, David, I'm excited that we had a chance to jam with you. But hey, for everybody out there watching and listening right now, one of the biggest compliments you can give us, if you enjoy the show, only if you enjoy the show. I know you enjoy the show, you watched it all. But like, if you enjoyed the show, all right.
You wouldn't still be here at this point in the show if you didn't enjoy it.
You wouldn't be here at this point in the show unless you actually enjoyed it, right? So one of the biggest compliments you can give us as content creators and just, you know, strategy enthusiasts, all right, is to share the show. It means so much to us when you share the show. If you got a manager, an owner, or friend, or a colleague that needs to see some portion of today's conversation, it means so much to us when you share that show and reach out to these guys, because I know they're going to respond back to you. That's just who they are. They love talking about this, and they are so excited about helping dealers become more profitable. And that is what marketing is for. It's supposed to make us more profitable, not just the engagement. Anyways, I'll get up. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to jam with me today. Justin, David, I really appreciate it. This has been a great episode, and really appreciate you guys this time. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Y'all rock. You guys have yourself an amazing day.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Modern Automotive Marketing, where modern marketing meets measurable results. From predictive insights to creative that actually converts, we're here to turn insight into action. Make sure to follow the show, share it with your team, and we'll see you in the next episode.